Hi, I'm Max Walker&Williams, and today we are talking about installment contracts. What are they? How do you use them in property safely to grow your property portfolio? I've used them myself, and I'm going to be giving you some real life examples in a second. Generally, on people's property journeys, they learn about lease options and then they come across installment contracts. That's the way it worked for me, at least. I had 2 or 3 lease options under my belt before I exercised my first installment contract. I prefer installment contracts, and if I had my time again, I probably wouldn't have done lease options and would have gone straight to installment contracts for reasons I'll explain shortly. It's important that you understand the foundations of installment contracts, and that is lease options. So I've made a video on lease options, and if you haven't seen that video, I strongly recommend you watch that one first. I'll put a link to it in the description below. Just scroll down, look for the link, click that, watch that video, and then come back to this one. Okay, so like a lease option, but for most part, even better. Okay, why are they better? Let's have a look. We've got lease options on the left, we've got installment contracts on the right. So, on a lease option, just to go over it very briefly, I'm hoping you've just come back from watching the video on lease options, so you don't need me to go through the full thing. If you didn't watch the video on lease options because you feel like you know what a lease option is, I'm just going to go over this briefly to refresh your memory. Rent paid every month, and rent is the key word in this. Usually fixed option to buy. Usually, sometimes obviously they fluctuate, as I've talked about in the lease option video. Lease ends, option is lost/expires. So you have 3 years, you rent the building for £1,000 a month, you have an option to buy it for £100,000. Once you come to the end of the 3 years, and you have to renegotiate with the landlord or hand the keys back, or the landlord won't negotiate and you lose the property, and any work that you've done, any time, effort, money you've spent on the property is gone, and there's the benefits, landlord's benefit. Rent is wasted money. Okay, so that's a really important thing here about rent. Okay, installment contracts. Payment towards capital paid every month. So instead of paying rent every month, you're paying a monthly payment towards the price of the property. Can run for the full term. What does that mean? It means that you say, okay, I will buy this property off you for £100,000 and I'm going to pay £2,000 a month for 50 months, and at the end of the term, at the end of the 50 months, I own the property outright. So it's not rent, it isn't wasted, it actually comes off the bill. Can run for the full term. So the other way it can work, I say can because the other way it can work is you say, okay, I will buy this property for £100,000 and I will pay £1,000 a month for 2 years, which is £24,000, and then the other £66,000 I will pay at the end. So you pay off the balance. A bit like when you buy a car, you can do hire purchase, which is monthly payments for a certain term, and at the end of it, every month the payments are the same, even the last month, and at the end of it you own the car outright. Or you can do PCP, which has a balloon at the end, and you make a monthly payment every month, which comes off the bill, and at the end you have a balloon payment to pay, you have a lump sum to pay at the end. So it's exactly the same as that. Inflation on your side. So inflation is on your side with lease options, except you're paying rent. So even though the option for £100,000 is becoming worth less and less every year with inflation, and if you're not familiar with inflation, I've done a video on that one too. So I'm a pretty good at, here's one I made earlier. You must have watched Blue Peter as a kid. So yeah, I've done a video on inflation. So if you're not sure about inflation, click the other link in the description below, and that will tell you all about inflation. So inflation is on your side. So not only are you giving money and the debt you owe is coming down, the debt is also being eroded by inflation. The debt's being eroded with lease options, the debt is being eroded by inflation too, but it's kind of being subsidized by the fact that you're having to pay rent, which is going down the drain. It's not coming off the bill. Okay, so renting on an installment contract is the dream. Okay, so what do I mean by that? Renting on an installment contract is the dream. So that brings me nicely to my real life example. So I own a warehouse, a couple of warehouses actually, in fact, in Liverpool, and they have some land with them. So the purchase price was £180,000. I agreed with the vendor, with the seller, £2,000 per calendar month for 90 months, which is 7.5 years. So £180,000, £2,000 a month equals 90 months, you've paid £180,000. So from day one, shaking hands, to 7.5 years later, I own the property outright, and I owe no debt on it, unencumbered. I have no mortgage. two 3,000 square foot warehouses plus 1 acre of land. So that's what the property consisted of. It is two 3,000 square foot warehouses and an acre of land. Now the two warehouses were not derelict, but they needed work. There was holes in the roof and there was a lot of work. The owner of the property had just had enough. He'd come to the end of his tether. He'd sold his business for quite a bit of money, made quite a bit of money, but he was tired and he wanted to retire and he really wasn't fussed. He'd made a lot of money over his life of work. And then he'd sold his business for really good money at the end. The people who'd bought the business where the warehouses were had relocated. They bought the business and moved it. So he was left with this big chunk of a property. He saw it as a burden. People kept breaking in, people were squatting in there at one point. There were some caravans on the land at one point, and he just had enough of it. He was sick of it. He didn't even like going there to meet me. He asked me, he said, look, if you come to my house, pick up the keys, you just go down and have a look, see what you think, bring the keys back to me. He didn't even want to face it. He just had enough. So, I was more than happy to take these on. Two 3,000 square foot warehouses, like I say, with an acre of just sort of hard, concreted scrub land. I spent £15,000 per warehouse on each of the warehouses, £30,000 total in savings that I had, and with that I repaired the roofs. I put electric roller shutters, I put electric motors on the roller shutters that were already there, so they were on a fob, so when you drove up you didn't have to get out your car when it's raining. Rains in Liverpool all the time, most of the northwest, if not the UK, rains all the time. Don't have to get out your van to put the roller shutter up with the, go through the sort of pedestrianised door, and then you have to pull a chain and that raised the shutter. No, now you've got a nice little shiny fob, you press the button and the electric roller shutter goes up, which is lovely, especially because in these big buildings you could drive into them with a van, so you never actually have to get wet when it's raining, and you don't have to get your produce or whatever you've got in your van wet either. So I spent about £15,000 on each of the warehouses, £30,000 total, and then I rented them out for £1,250 each per unit, on an FRI, which stands for fully repairing and insuring. So the tenants are responsible for repairing the properties, maintaining the properties, and insuring the properties. So the rent they pay me is net, meaning that I get to keep all of it, except, say, for my mortgage, or in this case, my instalments to the vendor. I also then got £600 for the yard. So I told the two guys with the two different businesses that rented the things, you can have a little bit of the frontage where you can park your vehicles and that sort of thing, but the rest of the yard is mine and I'm going to be using it. And then I rented it out for £600. So, top line figures, £2,000 per calendar month I was paying to the landlord in instalments, with all £2,000 of it coming off the bill of 180. The minute I'd made 90 payments of £2,000, now no more payments, the payments stop, the property is mine, free and clear. I get £2,500 total in rent for the warehouses, and then I get £600 for the yard. So in total, I'm getting £3,100. I give the landlord £2,000, leaving me with £1,100 per calendar month, or £99,000 over the 90 months. So it didn't actually quite work like that because I'd already made about 6 payments while I was doing up the warehouses and stuff. So it wasn't the full 7.5 years. I've probably been renting them out now I've owned it for 6 years, and I've probably been renting them out for about 5.5, maybe 5 and a bit, and the other one 5.5 years. So it isn't quite £99,000 over the term, to be fair. Because they obviously you don't take the keys day one and give them to the tenant day one. There's a time lag there while I did the work. But you get the point. The point is, not only have I got these properties for free, I'm being paid, not 99,000, but close to £60,000, say, to buy them. So I spend 30, I get 60 in rent over the 90 months, so take out the 30 cost. So I'm making £30,000 pre-tax net profit, and I get the buildings and the yard for free. I have just applied for planning permission, and it's been granted to build 10 new warehouses on the land. So I haven't built them yet, I haven't done it yet, and I will be doing a YouTube video actually on it. So you'll actually get to see this firsthand. So I'm not full of nonsense, full of fluff. Once the work starts, I've already got the planning permission. Once the work starts, I'll do a YouTube video, and I'm actually going to do a time-lapse video of them building the warehouses, of MD building the warehouses on the site. So you'll actually be able to see the site for yourself. So once that's done, I reckon it's going to be worth between 1.8 and 2.1 million pounds, and I've got a valuation to prove it. So 1.8 to 2 million pounds. Once I've spent £1 million building the warehouses out, of course, making it all nice and pretty, tarmacking it, floodlights, a big sliding electric gate to get into the yard, that sort of thing. So a lot of money to be spent, but nevertheless, the point is, not only can you get property for free, if you do the deal right, you can actually, with instalment contracts, you can actually get paid to buy the property. As counterintuitive, as scam-like that sounds, I mean, it's there for yourself. You check my maths, you check it out for yourself. So how do you go about finding instalment contracts? Well, exactly as I said in the lease options, in the lease option video I did a what you need. The list is exactly the same. These are exactly the same as lease options in terms of you need trust, you need a good solicitor, and so on and so forth. The only difference between the lease option and the instalment contract is, rather than paying rent every month and that going down the toilet, with the option to buy the property for a price that's fixed and doesn't change until you pay for it, with the instalment contract, you actually have the building, you make payments, and the bill reduces every month you're making payments, and so your money isn't wasted. Now, I've done all sorts of different types of deals. I've done deals where it's a lease option installment contract hybrid. So for example, you would say with this real life example, it was 100% interest free. So every penny I paid comes off the bill. I haven't finished paying it yet, so it's not past tense. Every penny I pay comes off the bill. So there is no interest. You can have them where people will say, okay, instead of £2,000 per calendar month, I want £2,000 per calendar month, but £1,500 comes off the bill and £500 is interest. And that's to be negotiated. You have to negotiate it yourself with the vendor, and it's whatever they're happy to do that makes sense for them, and whatever you're happy to give that makes sense for you. So you could do one where you have some interest and some repayment, half-y-half. You can have a balloon payment. So I could have said, for example, the vendor might have said, look, give me 24 payments of £2,000, so that's £48,000, and then at the end of the 24 months, you've got to give me the balance of 100 and whatever it is. So that would be another way of doing it. So you can really go out there and do, and that's the beauty of property, and that's the beauty of lease options and instalment contracts, is that they're only limited by your imagination. So the prices aren't fixed, it can be agreed. How much of the money, how much of every pound comes off the bill at the end, it can all be agreed, whether there's a balloon. And the one thing I would say with instalment contracts is generally sellers, vendors, want them the time as short as possible, obviously. So if I said to you, I'll buy your house off you, but I can't get finance, or I don't want to use the banks or whatever. I want to sort it out direct. Can I pay you direct? You might say, okay, well, it's £100,000. Give me 10 payments of 10 grand a month. And you might say, yep, that's no problem. And you pay 10 grand in January, 10 grand in February, and so on and so forth. Now, that's a really extreme example, 10 months. And you might say, well, I can't afford that, so I want 100 months, and then that's how the negotiation starts, and then you meet somewhere in the middle, hopefully. I hope that makes sense. I hope you find it interesting. They really, really are powerful things. If you've got any questions at all, just leave them in the comments for me below. Share this with your friends and family if you wouldn't mind, and if you haven't already, subscribe to the channel, because there's loads of more information. Have a look at the H-bar videos. A lot of people seem to like them, the H-barbarians. Have a look at the video where I got my bottom kicked on the Hadira auction. That was quite a funny one. And then we've got the team ones and the family ones. So something for everybody. Thanks ever so much for watching. I'll see you again soon.